You can always just measure the level of hate mail, see if it's gone down.
Would you like to join a conversation with the Freelancer Show panelists and their guests? Want to support the show? We have the form that allows you to join the conversation and support the show at the same time. Sign up at freelancershow.com/forum. Hey everybody, and welcome to episode 122 of the Freelancer Show. This week on our panel we have Curtis McHale.
Woohoo!
Eric Davis.
Hi.
Ruben Lerner.
Hey everyone.
I'm Charles Max Wood from devchat.tv. And this week we're going to be talking about valuing your time, how to handle people who are coming to you and trying to take advantage of your kindness by getting free advice, that kind of stuff. Let's go ahead and talk about this.
So we got some free advice for you here.
Yeah.
No.
So the pernicious evil that I see when people have this kind of stuff is they send you an email and they say, hey, I've got a quick question. And it's a quick question to ask, but not a quick question to answer.
Yeah. So I keep one call per week kind of open to talk to new freelancers because other freelancers help me at different points. And I will book them into that half-hour call to basically ask whatever they want for half an hour. But when that half hour is done, it is done. Mm-hmm. Like I'll just say, sorry, half hour's done. That's all the time I have. And if you want further help, consulting, whatever, then you need to pay me for it. And I do very similar things with clients. If they have a question and I can answer in kind of their intro call, which is part of my onboarding process, then I'll answer it right there. That's fine. But when they come back with, and here's 2 or 3 other ones, can you just take more looks at my site? I respond back with, here's how much it costs to hire me. This is, minimum 5 hours to start going through this, and we can start scoping out your project. But that's it. I'm not just doing free advice all the time.
I think it's an easy trap to get sucked into for a lot of us. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I got into consulting in part because I really like helping people, and I really like using the skills that I've gained to help people who don't have those skills. And so if someone comes and says, oh, could you help me out? My first instinct is to say, well, yes, I'd love to help you. And it took me a good few years at the beginning to realize, first of all, this is a losing business strategy to constantly be just helping people and not charge for it. And secondly, the advice I'm giving people is hopefully and presumably helpful and worth something to them. And if it's worth something to them, then that is worth paying for. And of course, the bottom line is, as I tell people, I wish I could help you for free, but, I got to pay my mortgage and pay for food and so forth. And this is how I earn a living.
I really like to help people too. So yesterday I was actually over at Starbucks. I set up a co-working thing every week. And, we talked, and a junior developer that I know showed up, and he's bidding out a project, and so he asked me a bunch of questions. And if I'm out there hanging out, if I'm at a users group or something like that, I don't mind chatting with people. And if you have questions, I don't mind answering questions. The problem comes in when I have, for example, I have about 500 emails I need to get through, probably today, to get caught up on my email. And I'm probably going to see about having Mandy or somebody else help me with my email load because it just kind of blew up on me. And part of that's because I was gone for 2 extra days this weekend. But anyway, so I don't have time to answer those questions. And a lot of times the quick question, it's a quick question to ask. But, I have to sit down. I have to think about the answer. I have to come up with a good response. And, it's not a quick question for me. And so, yeah, a lot of times I'll give them a cursory answer, which is something along the lines of, well, we did a Freelancer Show episode or Ruby Rogues episode about this. And, things like that. But how do you tell people that without being rude?
Well, some people are just going to think it's rude, right? I don't get as many emails as you do, but I just don't respond to ones where it's like just not, especially when it's the me, like, how can you help me? How can you help me? How can you help me? And they're not offering me anything whatsoever. Because I just don't have the time. I've got kids that I would like to hang out with at some point. That's why I only book like one call in a week to help with someone else, and that's a half hour. If we can answer it in half an hour, that's fine. If it's outside of half an hour, then you can pay me for it. Same with the client stuff. We can start scoping your project if it takes longer than half an hour. Otherwise, then you just can't do it. So I don't worry about it. I will be rude. All of my friends know, even friends I know that I do give, their free advice or look at their stuff. They know that my world does not center around them. So if I take 2 weeks to look at it, then they can pay me to take less time, or they can wait 2 weeks.
I found kind of the same thing. I've also, let people know, hey, look, here's kind of why I'm busy. I record 4 podcasts in a week and I have client work and I just don't have time to formulate a great response for this. here are the 2 or 3 things that come to mind in the 2 minutes I'm going to spend on this email, and I'm really sorry that I don't have time to give you a better answer. And most people seem to be okay with that. They understand, hey, yeah, he's, doing all this other stuff, and, I get a lot of value out of the podcasts, which is usually why they've emailed me anyway. I love your podcast, and I had the question. So people tend to be okay with that for the most part.
So another thing that I'm thinking of doing as my email scales up is, again, booking a half hour to answer the emails, and whatever emails I can get through in half an hour, great. The rest of them I'm just going to trash, because I simply cannot deal with all of it, right?
Yeah. I do like to get people a response, some kind of response. But
why, though?
I don't know. I like to feel connected.
No offense to our listeners, and I'm probably sounding rude, but we all have lives that do not revolve around everyone else, right? Like, my life does not revolve around each and every listener and what they might need from me at any exact point. I love to help people, and I teach, and some of the best stuff I do is actually, I love teaching my students. When I teach WordPress stuff or anything, I love mentoring and helping, and that's why I'm in mastermind groups and everything else, but I simply cannot do it for free all the time unless I want to live in a fridge box with my family, and I really don't. I think it would be a little more cramped than where I am now, even.
Even if it was a nice 2-bedroom fridge box?
Even a 2-bedroom fridge box. Even if we happen to have a washer, like a washing machine box beside it, it would be more cramped.
Yeah, and
I'm not always so good about getting back to people via email quickly, especially if it's not urgent for business stuff. But I do feel, and perhaps this is just me, I definitely feel if someone writes to me, they deserve a response. Maybe a short response, maybe, I don't know. But I feel pretty bad if I ever end up not responding to anyone at all. I do feel like I'm sort of obligated, I don't know, maybe just by, culture to respond.
If you're working with a client, of course you're going to respond to them. But if it's someone who you don't know, they know you, they're not on your mailing list, they've never bought a product from you, if it's just a completely anonymous person, there's not much there for you to respond with. And especially, like Curtis said, if it's just they're talking about them and they want to take information or stuff from you, sometimes I'll just delete those or archive them or just ignore them. And other times it's just a template reply if it's, the same question that a lot of other people have asked. But it also steps up. I have a list of, my best customers. I have a list of people who are on my newsletter who I've had conversations with, and those people, they get kind of more priority. My email recognizes, they've contacted me several times, so I can actually say, oh, I know this person. He actually takes my advice, has good responses to it. It's probably going to be good for me to interact with him. Sometimes it even helps me, if he has a problem that I can write about or do something where, you write about it once and then 100 people can learn from it. Sometimes that's actually a net benefit.
Yeah, when I saw, Eric emailed me last week and we had 2 or 3 emails going back for a couple of days there in a row. I would jump any of the emails from you here on the podcast or other guests we've had. I would jump on those quite quickly. When people contact me on Twitter, I reply to almost everyone if I can help at all, because it's a limited form of communication right out of the gate, right? But all the emails that come through, some I just don't have time for, and I make time for my children. Yes, Eric, you should be happy. You're doing a happy dance, right?
Right.
Yeah, Eric says right. It really does depend on relationship, right?
Yeah, I have this guy who called me, I guess once every 6 or 8 months for the last few, say 2 years or so. And he called me again today. And in the past, he's asked me, well, do you think Ruby's a good programming language and should I work on it? I've tried this tutorial. So I point in the direction of Michael Hartle's tutorial and I point in the direction of a few other things. And then he called me today, after, again, probably 6, 8 months that I'd not heard from him. And I totally remember who this guy is. And I basically come to the conclusion, I just don't have time to start answering lots of questions. And he said to me, well, here's my problem. Ruby isn't quite working on my system. Can you help me out? And I was very straight. I said, yeah, I can help you out, but here's what my rate is to help you. And I think he was a little surprised. And he said, well, is there anywhere I can get free advice? I've heard that there's a meetup once a month in Tel Aviv. I said, yeah, if it's not that urgent to you, then you can probably go there and people will help you. It's all a matter of how important it is that you get this fixed now and working now. And if that's important, then I'll have to fit it into my schedule and find a way to do it. And for that, you'll have to pay. And he might have been taken a little back by this. But when I hung up the phone, I felt really good. I felt like, you know what? I'm going to give him good advice if and when he wants to get it and take it. But I'm also not going to feel like, oh my God, another morning I spent with someone doing something for free. And now I've got to work late at night to make up for that to pay the bills.
Well, it's about
Yeah,
information packaging. If someone needs something right now, like it's urgent, and you have the answer or whatever it is, they're going to put more value on it. They're going to be willing to pay more for it. And, if you are giving someone specific information like, oh, your Mac has a problem with Ruby because you don't have this other thing installed, versus generic information of step 1, do this, step 2, do this. The more specific the information is, the more people value it, the more they would pay for it. And, like in this case, some people, it's not urgent. It's not really that important. And the benefit they're going to get from you helping them on their exact case it's not worth it for them to pay your actual rate. And so it's just the cost benefit equation.
Yeah, when I do user groups, like most often it's whatever, if there's even speaking, it's not something that I'm there to get the whole topic on. I'm there to meet people, and I have certainly sat in entire user groups helping someone with, basic problems with WordPress to business stuff. And that is what I'm there for at that point. And I don't mind making myself available. Or we have an upcoming WordCamp, and I will, like when I'm not speaking, I would sit outside in sessions and help people the whole day. That doesn't bother me at all. Again, sandboxing that, I can't do that every day.
Right. The context matters a lot. Right. If I'm at a user group, if I'm even at a conference, then if someone comes up to me, I think I'm more likely to help them out because I'm there as opposed to at my desk working on client work, trying to get through my to-do list for the day or for the week, and someone calls me up, they're not going to get the priority.
Yeah. The unfortunate part is that too many people assume that our only or someone's only thing today is to reply to your email. I know my friend Pippin, who we've had on a number of shows ago, like I've emailed him for support, and I even have his personal cell phone number. Like I could just call him and ask my questions, but I know his day does not center around me. So I'll send him an email and I'll wait the 2 or 3 days it takes for the support team to get through it. And that's totally fine. And if I have, a real issue, I think like I got a triple charge on my credit card once, and I emailed him specifically. I was like, hey, is this how it should be? And he, he said, no, let's bump it off to the right person. But other than that, I just let his support process take it. And that is fine with me.
I had something happen which is similar, I guess, to what we're talking about. So, as I've said many times, as you guys know, I do a lot of training through this company in Israel, John Bryce. And they make a lot of money in general, but they've discovered that they can make a lot of money off of conferences as well. And so I guess each year for the last 3 years, 4 years, they've called me up and said, so, would you like to speak at such and such a conference? Now, my general reaction is yes, I'm happy to speak at conferences, mostly because I know that sometime after speaking at a conference, it will lead to work. It might take 6 months, but it will lead to some work. And so I was a little surprised. So, and that's usually, a 20-minute talk, 30-minute talk. I stick around a little bit. I get a free lunch out of the deal. Okay, not so bad. So I was a little surprised when they called me from John Bryce a few years ago and said, would you like to speak at a conference? And I said, yes. How long would it be for? And they said, the full day. I said, and you're going to pay me for this, right? And they said, no, it's such amazing exposure for your consulting business. We don't pay speakers. So I said, sorry, I can't do that. I don't do that. And so I was pleasantly surprised when this year, about 2 months ago, they called me up to speak at a conference, and they said that they would pay me, or they gave me the option also of having a booth that I could staff from my company. And given that my company is me and a programmer who works from home, the booth was not really a good option. So I was happy to see that they were willing to pay me for it, but sort of still shocked that they generally assume people can just take a day off, and they'll, of course, make tons of money off of this.
Yeah, and so like WordCamps, you speak for free, but I know like they're not profit. Any money goes back to the overall foundation to supply other WordCamps that don't make a profit, right? And so I speak for free there.
Different story. Right.
Yeah, I speak for free there and take all my travel, but I was asked to come speak at another one that they were charging. Like, I think WordPress conference is like $25 to go, right? And so I was asked to speak at another one in Vancouver that was like $1,000 ticket, and it was of the no pay variety. And I said, no, like at $1,000 a ticket, you guys can afford to pay me and afford to pay for a hotel room for me to come out. So I'm not like getting up at 5 a.m. to go out and drive. Whereas it's a $25 WordPress one, like I'll get up at 5 a.m. I'll go drive into the city, I'll speak, and I'll hang out all day, and then I'll drive home and spend a long day. That's fine.
We want to help people. We want to take the time out. Sometimes taking the opportunities that people present us are worth it for our business or what have you. When there is a clear business benefit, for example, somebody has a question about some technology that, you have some expertise in and it may lead to work. What's kind of the boundary that you hit before you start saying, okay, you've got to start paying for my time?
I think, again, it depends on relationship, right? If any of you guys wanted to sit and talk with me about WordPress for an hour on Skype, I'd just do it. I wouldn't even really think about it, right? Uh-huh. But if a random client wants to sit and talk with me for an hour, I would say no. How about, yes, Reuben, I would even give you 2 hours, but I would expect coffee when we meet.
Come and get it, guy.
Come and get it. Okay. I can go to Israel and get it. But like a client, my process is I have an email and there's a whole ton of questions in it and they need to answer most of them as best they can. They can't answer all of them usually. And then, we'll go back and forth to tweak some of our answers and find out what we want to do. And if at that point we think it's a good fit, then we move into a half-hour call and we do that half-hour call and that's it. Like I book them back to back. So it is literally a half-hour call and I have 10 minutes in between them. And if they need more like on phone time than that, then I really sit down and think like, is this actually a good client? Is this, on a $25,000 project, if they want another half hour on the phone to just make sure we tweak some things, great. Otherwise, I book them into like a scoping session and say, this is a scoping session with clients or with people that want business advice. Then I'm actually looking at a site called Clarity and it allows you to charge like by the minute for your time. And I can say, you know what, if you have more questions, you can by all means book my time here. Right. And so they could pay for, 15 or 20 minutes of your time. But then you're actually on the clock as well. Yeah,
my strategy over the years has been to give people an initial meeting for free. And the assumption is that initial meeting will be about an hour long. And I used to go to meet with people for that hour. And at a certain point, my wife said, why are you doing this? If it's really important that they meet for you, and if you're meeting with them for free, have them come meet you at our house. And so just yesterday, 2 days ago, I said that to someone. I mean, I've started doing this more and more, and people are generally willing to do it, which frees up an enormous amount of my time. And I'm thinking of moving even into just limiting it even more, because I'm just finding my time is so limited. And to start saying to everyone in the known universe, oh yeah, I'll give you an hour for free, it can become a little overwhelming at times. That said, yesterday I had 2 hour-long meetings with potential clients for free, and I went to them because both of them are likely to happen, and both of them seem like really lucrative contracts. So, my decision was, I think it's worth giving them this because it'll be so worth in the long term.
Yeah, and I've been changing how I'm doing stuff. After the first few emails of kind of introductions, I have 5 or 6 questions. I'll email them and try to get responses, and that's like what I use to qualify people. Like if they respond to like, what's your budget question with, I have $100, I know it's not going to work for me and I kind of move on. Like I'll point them to other resources to do what they need, but I try to get answers to those questions, figure out like, okay, there's a good chance that this would be a good fit just in regards to like, we're kind of on the same page. And then I'll do like a 30-minute meeting with them. And basically that's their free advice. Like I want to fill out the relationship, see how we're going to communicate. I want to learn about their project, like if they have technical problems or, whatever, but mostly it's to see how well they can talk to me on the phone, how well I can talk to them, answer any questions they'll have. If they have like business questions about like how they're going to monetize or all that, like I'll answer it. But after that, basically it's either let's go to contract or let's part ways. And that's, it's basically because I've been in some meetings where it's gone like 4 or 5 hours of meetings over the course of a month that just wouldn't go anywhere.
Yeah, I don't do that if clients want me to go in and meet with them. Like in Vancouver, that's a 60-mile, 100-kilometer drive for me, and depending on traffic, can be 2 hours. And I tell them that it's a build day from the time I leave my doorstep till the time I make it back. And that actually usually gets them to say, oh, really? Well, how about I come out to you in Chilliwack because I don't charge for travel time at that point? Because it's, we pick a spot. There's a room I can rent really close, and I'll just walk the 2 blocks over to the room, and I don't charge them for walking 2 blocks.
So I'm a little curious now. Do you find that, doing things like this brings more people to you that have the quick question?
Well, I think this is the first time that I've made it. Oh, like Clarity, you mean, or like me?
Just doing things like the podcast and stuff.
Yeah, I think it does. I've got more questions since I started doing the podcast and put out some other books. This is the first time I've made it more public that I keep kind of a half hour a week aside for other freelancers. So usually it's just someone emails me for a question. I say, hey, why don't we jump on the phone if you want, book a time. Here's a link, and they can book it themselves in the time slots that I've allowed for that. Only 1 per day.
I don't think I've gotten very much email having to do with the podcast or based on the podcast. I probably get, an email message every 2 to 3 weeks from someone needing some help or advice. But it's also very sort of hazy for me because some of it has to do with work. And I'm also involved in my community. I have this email list for people living in my city. So I get a lot of personal email there asking about it. And I've been running my own business in Israel. So I get email from people either wanting to do that or moving to Israel and wanting to know about it. So it's not that much. But, occasionally happens. I think my preference is, I'm happy that we now have, here's a quick plug, right? I'm happy that we now have the forum for the podcast because it means that someone can ask a question and the answer can benefit a lot of people, which is more efficient for everyone than just providing a one-on-one answer.
Yeah, for my students, I actually started using Slack, and a few of them have private messaged me or emailed me, and I wrote back, ask the question where everyone can see it. And they ask it, and then I've actually found a lot of times my other students have answered it for me by the time I get in, because by the time I have a chance to look at it, or everyone can see the answer, and other students are like, I'm so glad you asked that too.
Well, and the other thing with this podcast is we've covered a lot of topics, so I get some emails from people who listen, but most of the time they're kind of higher up on the scale of like, they put the effort in, like they listen to shows, and most of the time they're looking for like pointers of like, hey, have you guys talked about invoicing clients? Not a question of, hey, I need to invoice a client. How do I do it? And so a lot of times I can just send them a link to a past podcast or some resources that I already have. So it's a lot lower commitment on my end, which has actually made it pretty good. When I was doing a lot of open source stuff with Redmine, the support burden of that was basically overwhelming. I mean, I was getting dozens of emails per day from people who needed custom help and weren't willing to pay for it. And it actually got to the point where I actually burned out a couple times and basically said, I'm not doing support. I'm not doing this anymore. And that's a significant part of why I actually left that ecosystem completely.
Yeah, I keep a bunch of my WordPress plugins off the bigger.org WordPress repository simply so I don't have to deal with support. I find on GitHub when people get it, they more often are willing to actually, I have a solution as well as a problem, right? Or I'm willing to work on a solution with you.
I mean, I've also found sometimes that it helps. I mean, I've started blogging a bit more over the last few months. And so if someone asks me a question that I think would be generalizable or generally interesting to people to answer, I'll even tell them, look, here's my quick answer, and I'm going to think about this and write something up in the coming days. I think I've done that once or twice, and it's actually, it benefits them, and it also benefits me. And once again, it makes the answer public, and it helps to boost my reputation, boost my Google score, and all that other stuff. So it's sort of good for everyone.
I do that all the time, too. I know Eric asked me a question recently, and I started writing to him, and then I was like, wait, and I wrote a whole blog post about it, and then sent it off to him, too. I sent him like the advanced copy first, and then sent him the whole blog post.
Yeah, one thing I've done it, but I'm kind of changing it is for if you get like a lot of questions about one topic, like what your niche or your specialty or whatever, you can also create like a survey form that, send people there. Like if they ask you a question, email, say like, hey, thank you, but I don't have time to answer this in detail. Can you fill out the survey? And then, every month or whatever I go through and we'll answer those questions, on a public blog post. And the nice thing is sometimes, if it's not an urgent kind of thing, like I talked about earlier, they can put their question and they know they're going to get an answer. You can answer it at your own pace, and you also get the benefit of like sharing it with the community. And one thing I've noticed, like you get a lot of like similar classes of questions. They're not identical, but like there's like 80% of that overlaps. And so if you can do a blog post or something like that answers that part of it, most people can read that and then have their own custom part for the 20%. Like, oh, well, you told me how to do invoicing. I have to do it a little bit because I'm in a different country. But they get the basics in there. And surveys are really good for that. And they're very low maintenance on you. Like if you're busy, you don't have to go through and do a lot of work with them.
Have you guys found that when you tell people that you charge for your work, that you can't provide that much for free, do you find they're ever resentful or upset about it? Yeah. I've generally found they're pretty okay with it.
Some people are. I think it depends on who it is. I've had some people where I basically explained, hey, look, I've got a lot going on and I just don't have time to give you a good answer, or, I don't have time to give you a good answer right now. They feel like I'm blowing them off, and they get all upset because they feel like for some reason I owe them a proper response.
For what reason though? Because they gave you money? Because they're your friend? Or just because they're some random internet person?
Because they're some random internet person, and because I think they're accustomed to getting content from me for free anyway in the form of the podcast, and they think that I'm famous or rich or something. I don't know.
Expectations.
But
you are rich, aren't you?
Yeah, I wish. But at the same time, I think most people are pretty reasonable about it. It's just that occasional person where it's like, oh, I thought you being a whatever in the community would be more willing to help and open and blah 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 blah. And I don't respond to those people. I would never even
respond to that. Yeah, if I got that back. There's always going to be people that are like that. There's nothing you can do about it. And honestly, I hope they never talk to me again after that, because I don't want to have anything to do with them. I've got way better things to do with my time, like massage my beard, than deal with people like that.
Yeah, totally. And there have been a few times where I really wanted to just say, well, why don't you go count the number of hours I've put into putting content out there in the form of video or audio? But really, I mean, there's no arguing with these people. It's not a reasonable thing. They're upset, and, that's basically the way it is.
I mean, you can just ignore them. And I use Sane, I don't remember what, it's Sane Email, Sane Inbox, whatever, but they have
Sane
a
Box?
feature. Yeah, they have a feature called Sane Black Hole, which
Yep.
You put something in there and anything from that sender is immediately deleted. Like, it's like a blacklist, but it doesn't even put it in spam. It's gone. I've thrown some more of the abusive people in there. And I mean, a lot of it is, like I said, like their expectations aren't set. Like, I've had a person asking for advice and I said, sorry, I don't have time to answer this. And they replied back with, well, will $20 change your mind? And I'm like, no.
Yeah.
See, I'd write back and say no, but 500 would. So if you got $500, I got half an hour.
That's one thing that I've done too, is I actually have in Text Expander. I've used Text Expander, and I had a response in there that basically said, hey, I'm totally willing to help you out, but here are the limitations of how I can help you out unless we're coaching, and here are my coaching rates. And that seems to work out pretty well. And yeah, I've used the same black hole thing again too, and it's pretty handy.
Maybe I didn't do that. I just keep deleting them.
Yeah, if you put it in Sane Black Hole, the way that SaneBox works is it actually combs through your inbox and then moves stuff. So for about 2 seconds, it'll show up in your inbox if you're there at just the right time. Otherwise, you'll never see it.
Yeah, and for some other ones, I've set up, standard message filters where if it's from this person, put it in this folder. That's done on the server side, so it's like it doesn't even show up in my inbox. And I'd like go into wherever it gets filed. I'm like, oh look, I guess this person's sending me emails again. Oh well.
I don't think I've ever had anyone repeatedly send me email that was so annoying that I needed to put them on an auto delete list. Of course, now I've invited that upon myself, right?
Yeah, I'm going to automate that today because I have nothing else to do, right? I'll automate annoying emails to Reuven. No, I've had one plugin developer who wants me to try their plugin because it's the new best thing that's ever going to be out there, and I'm a fool for not looking at it, and they continue to send me that, and after my one, no thank you, I just don't have time, I just delete them now.
The whole thing getting requests for free advice over the years has completely changed my perspective. Not that I really ever did this, but I feel bad for doctors and lawyers and other people who are constantly getting requests for, oh, can you just explain this? Can you just do that?
Yeah, I'm actively avoid talking. I have a good friend of mine who is a doctor, and I actively avoid asking him any doctor-related questions. He's treated my daughter once in the emergency room. He actually asks us sometimes, like, oh, how is she doing for this? How are the kids doing? Unless he asks, I say nothing about it, because he has other stuff to do.
Yeah. I mean, if I'm sitting down and chatting with somebody and I know they have some expertise, a lot of times I'll say, hey, do you mind if I ask you a question about whatever? But I usually try and keep it to like 5 minutes and, really just be respectful. And then if I really do need their kind of expertise or whatever, then I'll email them and say, okay, what kind of arrangement do we need to make in order to do this? And most of the time, like Curtis was saying before, if we have a relationship already, most of the time they're like, well, let's just talk. And then if it turns into something that really does require a bit of time, then we'll start working things out where I'm paying them for their time.
Yeah, I make it up to them, like if they need to be paid for time. I go in assuming I'm paying. My friend is a physiotherapist. After my big ride, I had a little problem with my ankle. And he said he'd do it for free. Look at my ankle for free. And I said, no, I'll pay you. And after our first, 20-minute consult, he's like, I don't need to see you again. Just stretch it. You'll be fine. You don't need to pay me for 20 minutes of my time. But that was his choice. I would have paid him for whatever time he felt was necessary.
A number of years ago, I saw some sort of, it was a satirical, obviously fake questionnaire for people applying for membership to a synagogue. And it said, I would like to sit next to, check here, doctor, lawyer, accountant, therapist, for free advice while services are going on.
Oh, that's funny.
And I mean, of course, the sad thing is, it's true. I mean, I don't get it so much in synagogue, but certainly when we first moved into our apartment building, within a day, our new neighbors were like, oh, welcome to the building. It's so nice. We hear you're a computer person. Is that really true? And thankfully, I said to them, yes, I'd be happy to help you. By the way, I don't know anything about Windows. And that shut that conversation down very quickly, thankfully.
Yeah, I've actually had to shut the questions down for some of the pastors at my church. Like, how does my email's not working right on my Mac? And I was like, I don't even use the same email program as you. I have no idea. And so I just had to write an email saying, hey, I just don't have time, guys. I'm really sorry. I can't do it. If there's an emergency that like children will die and you need my help for it, I am there. I will drop what I'm doing for the day. But other than that, like there's a computer repair person, just go see him. Go see the guy that works with us or as at our church that does Mac training.
Yeah, people's salvation is getting backed up. Hurry and fix the email. What about family? This is one that gets me all the time. I finally told all of my brothers and sisters and all of my wife's brothers and sisters, it's like you get 10 minutes for free and then I'm done. The only people that I will help for free are basically people who were directly involved in giving life to my wife or I. So in other words, my parents, my grandparents, her grandparents. And
again, it all depends on the expectations though, right? Like I do some work for my brother's website and he sends it off to me and it is, hey Curtis, when you can get to this, I would love to see it in the next 3 weeks. And usually it's something really trivial, quite small for me. I just need to, get half an hour out for it. And he expects to pay me as well, right? So, after a month or two, he's like, I haven't seen an invoice. Do you have an invoice for me? And I will invoice him for part of the work because he also writes it off for his business as well.
Right. Yeah, I do a lot of the same kind of things for my dad. But I've gotten good. My mom, she expects me to drop everything and come help her. And a lot of times I'm just like, look, I can't come until Friday. And she gets angry and then she gets over it. And then I come on Friday. And I think there's a little bit of art to saying no or saying not right now, to people who you do have a relationship with.
You could just do like me and live on the other side of the country. It's a 52-hour travel time. So.
Oh, there you go. It's about a 20 minutes to half hour to get over to my parents.
I've been giving my parents advice, especially my father advice, for many, many, many years on computer stuff, and he never really takes my advice. I mean, when I was in high school, sometimes, and this sort of says what kind of high school I was in, I would sometimes be in the office just sort of answering the phones instead of the receptionist. There were a bunch of us students who would do that, and so sometimes my parents would know roughly when I would be there, and so they'd call, and my father would say, oh, I need some help with the computer, it's not doing X and Y and Z. But it was definitely a good thing when he found some local teenager to help him out with computer stuff. Unfortunately, that teenager then recommended, oh, you should totally switch to Linux. It is the coolest thing ever. Oh my God. So that was bad advice. But at least it wasn't mine.
I think it's all an approach too, right? Like I help my friends who are not very computer literate at all. And every time they say, hey, Curtis, I don't know what's happening with my computer. Can you come over? We show up, like I'll go over, I take the whole family, they give us all dinner, and they arrange when they can babysit our kids again so we can go out afterwards as well. And they have like usually a very easy problem, right? They installed browser toolbars or something. Or like my grandmother wanted to learn how to use a computer and she's like, just teach me one thing. Like, how do I open and send an email today? And she'd teach one thing and she'd show it to me the next week and she'd go, now how do I open up Skype? Right? It was one thing and that was it. And again, over there for dinner every Tuesday night. So she teaches, that's fine. It was not all about me, like, again, help me. It was, how can we also make sure we're helping you at the same time?
Makes sense. Anything else we should go over with this? Or should we get to the picks?
I think we can get to the picks.
All right. Eric, do you want to start us off with the picks?
Sure. So, I don't know if I picked this before, but I read it again recently. It's a book called The War of Art, not to be confused with The Art of War. It's by Stephen Pressfield, and it's basically targeted towards writers, but it's actually really good for anyone who does creative stuff. But it talks about how there's like this thing called the resistance and how that's your battles with that basically determines how your creativity works and all that. And it's nice because a lot of it kind of helps you get over, stumbling blocks, writer's block, that sort of thing. And I reread it recently, and it's actually helped out with a couple things I've been struggling with trying to get going. It's a pretty short book. It's really good to get like little snippets of advice from it.
Yeah, it's a terrific book. I also like his Do the Work.
Yeah, Do the Work. It seems like Do the Work was a lot like not Cliff Notes, but a very shrunk down version of it. I read that first, and so I knew kind of the ideas around War of Art, but I like this one better. It seems to be it connects a bit better. There's a lot more stuff that kind of links to each other.
Awesome. Curtis, what are your picks?
I'm going to pick a book called Boundaries, which is about it's your own emotional health and setting boundaries in all facets of your life, whether it's your spouse or your parents so Chuck, you're doing a good job of saying, yes, I'll be there on Friday. That is when I will be there. And it's even help you in this conversation, setting boundaries with your clients or with your children or everything else. It's a good book.
Awesome. Reuven, what are your picks?
So I've got 2 picks for this week. First of all, I've been looking into doing some ebooks, and I think I mentioned in an earlier podcast, Avdi Grimm has a system called Quarto. And unfortunately, it seems broken right now, and I'm either too lazy or too impatient to actually try it out. So I talked to a friend of mine who also had tried Quarto, and he pointed me to softcover.io. So I've just been looking through it, and it looks like an interesting and potentially very rich tool chain for creating ebooks and selling them. It's from Michael Hartle, who did the Rails tutorial book and videos and Empire. So this is basically what he's using now for doing his books and so forth. I think his plan is to make the toolchain available for free, and it is open source to anyone who wants to use it, but that it'll then be really easy to publish, sort of like a Heroku of publishing, if you can imagine it, where you just publish it and it goes to his website and it's available for sale and so on and so forth. So I've only started to dip my toes into that, but it's been very impressive so far. And as many listeners know, I've gone to China a few times in the last few years. I've gone 3 times in the last 2 years, I guess. And I'm going again twice more this year. And so I've decided that I've probably reached the point where I can't teach myself any more Chinese. I actually need to get a real tutor so that the people of Beijing are not inflicted with my terrible Mandarin. And then I'm not stuck trying to understand what they actually say when they understand my question and answer at rapid speed. So I found this company called eChineselearning.com. I've had 3 lessons so far. It's one-on-one video with Skype, and I've been really, really impressed. And they seem to have very good customer service. The prices are good. They let you pause it in the middle if you want. So I'm impressed with it as a business, and so far I feel like every lesson I have actually been improving, maybe millimeters each time, or whatever you measure language progress with. But definitely positive. Anyway, yes, it's in Mandarin, Curtis. It's Mandarin Chinese.
When are you doing a whole show in Mandarin for Mandarin listeners?
My estimate is that if I stick with it at this rate, hopefully in like 4 or 5 years, I'll be able to do some sort of like semi-serious talking, at least like part of the time in it. But A, it's a somewhat complex language, especially the pronunciation. And B, I just want to be able to ask for directions and not have people give me funny looks. Or if I ask for directions and they understand me and they answer in rapid fire Chinese, I'll understand what they're saying. But I must say it's an incredibly cool language, and it's been very refreshing. I know this is going to sound funny since I just finished a PhD and everything, but it's very refreshing to be not a teacher, but like the student in a typical classroom type of setting in something that I really don't know. It's already changed a little bit of how I do the teaching of the programming courses, seeing how hard it is to assimilate some of this information and put it in context.
Awesome. All right. Well, I've got a couple of picks here. The first one is a book by Jim Gaffigan. It's called Dad is Fat. It's pretty funny. He's a comedian, and it's just kind of a whole bunch of funny stuff about being a parent. So if you're a parent, it's pretty funny. I'm also now listening to the last book of the Wheel of Time series. Books 6 through about
500.
Yeah. Through about 10 are kind of slow, but it's kind of moving all the pieces in place so that things can wrap up. But the last 3 or 4 books, things really start to happen and move into place. I think that's partially because Robert Jordan, the author, passed away and Brandon Sanderson picked it up. And I think he was trying to fit it all into one book, and it wound up being 3 books worth. And so, things just kind of had to move along so that he could wrap up the story. But it's been really good, so I enjoy those. And finally, Curtis keeps mentioning Redbooth as the system he's using to manage tasks, and so I've been using that, and I'm really liking it. And I found a Chrome plugin that adds Redbooth features to your Gmail, which is, where I'm at for email. So I'm going to pick that plugin as well.
I didn't know about that. I'll have to check the show notes.
So those are my picks. I want to remind everybody that we are doing the book club book To Sell Is Human by Daniel Pink, and we're going to be talking to him in the beginning of August. So go pick up the book and read it, and look forward to that. And we'll wrap up the show. We'll catch you all next week. Hosting and bandwidth provided by the Blue Box Group. Check them out at bluebox.net. Bandwidth for this segment is provided by CacheFly, the world's fastest CDN. Deliver your content fast with CacheFly. Visit CACHEFLY.com to learn more.